Hi, everyone, and welcome to So Connected and today's session, Implementing Virtual Lab Simulations, Research and Rubric at Thomas Jefferson University. Before we jump into the main session today, I do want to go over a few quick housekeeping items. First, you are all encouraged to write any questions that you may have in the Q&A button that's located at the bottom toolbar. Feel free to ask those questions throughout the session, and we will definitely save some time towards the end of the session today to go through those questions. Second, this session, along with all of the other So Connected sessions today, will be recorded. So if you're interested in those recordings, please keep an eye out in your inbox. Those emails will be sent out with the recordings over the next week. And lastly, if you have any other follow-up questions after the session, you can email info@labster.com with those questions, and we will get back to you. Without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Manuela Tripepi, Assistant Professor from Thomas Jefferson University. Welcome, Dr. Tripepi.
Hi, how are you, Anna?
I am doing great, even better now that we get to connect and share all of your findings with our audience today. Just to get started, Dr. Tripepi, please tell us a little bit about your background and your role at Thomas Jefferson University.
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me today to speak about Labster. I'm very excited about this opportunity. Also because literally Labster saved me in a moment of crunch time, and I'll tell you more later. But about me, I was born in Italy, but I study, I have a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and I have been now in the higher education field for 9 years. I joined Jefferson 3 years ago, and at Jefferson, I teach microbiology, but I'm also the director of microbiology. So I coordinate all of our section for lecture and lab for our undergraduate students. So we teach biology student, health science, nursing, all of them have to go through microbiology, and some of them are happier than others taking our class, I guess.
Fantastic. And today we are, of course, talking about virtual lab simulations. Do you want to get us started with how you've implemented virtual lab simulations into your courses, and specifically what courses?
Yeah, so during the summer of 2019, right after the COVID lockdown, I started teaching a summer section of microbiology to help our students taking this class of season, let's say, so to get it done before. And I actually wasn't planning to use the online simulation because I wanted to use at-home lab kit. But during the time, the supply was so overwhelmed that like only a week before my class starting, they sent me an email and said that they would not been able to fulfill my order. So I went pretty much in a panic, and that's when I discovered Labster, and I connected with somebody at Labster that explained what you guys had, what you were doing, and just like that, like in 2 days, I was ready to go. My class was saved, and that's how I started to implement the Labster simulation when we were forced to go fully online during the pandemic. And since then, I have never stopped using Labster. And now we are, so I implemented the first time in microbiology lab, but talking with my coworker, now Jefferson University has decided to buy a blanket contract, I guess, license. So all of our classes in the future will use Labster. So I would see Labster being used in biology, anatomy, chemistry, and other classes that we have there, because now we have the license for 3 years. And I'm very, very excited about that.
Fantastic. And to give our audience a little bit more context, you mentioned that you've been using virtual lab simulations in the online course format, looking to use them then with a more traditional format. Can you share a little bit about your students? What types of students are taking the microbiology course, or just the general student population at Jefferson?
Yeah, so when I teach microbiology, I get, as I was saying, the health science and the pre-nursing student, but we also have the population of pre-med. So we have a mixed group of students. And since I'm a scientist, when I started using the lab stimulation, I also polled my students to try to figure it out, how the Labster simulation were working for their learning. Because recently I've become more and more interested in pedagogy and how our students learn and what I can do to improve their quality of learning, their experience, and the retention of the topic that we teach. So after the summer, I polled my student, and we had 100 students that participated in our research and told us what they thought about Labster and the online simulation.
Great. And to kind of go off of then that, so you spearheaded an important study that was looking into the viability of remote simulations, specifically for this microbiology course. I'm sure the audience is just as anxious as I am to hear a little bit more about those learnings and findings from that study.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'm going to share our student, Paul. Give me just one second. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I was interested, since we went from a complete in-person lab to a complete online experience for our student, to understand how did they like the simulation. So I had, as I said, we had 100 students at that time, and they were split in 4 different sections. So I asked them from 1 to 10, 10 be the highest, how much did they like the Labster simulation as a learning tool? And as you can see, the majority of them, score for the Labster simulation as 7 and above. So there was a great result, but then also I wanted to ask them why, right? So specifically, I asked them to comment on the quality of the simulation. And these are just some of the comments that I read. So the student didn't mind it at all. And they liked the fact that the simulation was pretty realistic and fun. And I have to say, I have done all the simulation myself before assigning it to them. And I am impressed on how realistic they look compared to other simulations that I had to overlook before deciding which one to use. This student like the fact that simple step like grabbing the lab coat and gloves before entering make it very much realistic. Of course, the 3D view of the things gives students a great platform to understand concept that is complicated for us to teach just on PowerPoint or on a whiteboard. And then this student, yes, got stuck on a little glitch, but it was happy because we were uncomfortable coming back to lab during COVID. So these are common comments that I have found throughout. And then I asked them about the learning during the simulation. What was the learning part that they like? This student, for example, felt that it was both educational and fun. And the information really stuck on them because they actually have better understanding concepts that were not clear to them before. What students are telling me is they like the fact that Labster reinforce the concept as they do the lab. And, again, the 3D was helpful. The interactive feature allowed them to do the information and retain the information as they were doing it, and not just the information, that we give them in lab, for example, in a in-person lab. And so one thing that they like was to get information as they was completing the lab. And this student in particular, this comment, I believe I have learned from the lab simulation. I often feel that I blindly follow direction when doing lab in person, but Labster helped me walk through what I was doing. So this is an important comment for two reasons. One is, okay, so Labster does do something for our student, right? They like it. It is an important step. And 2, we have to go back when we teach in person, and we need to fix that, right? We need to help our communication, we need to help our delivery, and we have to help our in-person lab to actually help our student retaining what they're doing. And it is true. It does feel when they do in-person lab that they just follow the protocol, but they don't do the extra thinking. And then the last one, I think the lab simulation were helpful and that there was a lot of information given to us. And I really like how I was learning throughout the entire lab. This is a common thing, right? The student learn as they do the lab rather than just following instruction. So to me, that was the most important comment that I had to read through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for collecting this and then sharing it with us today. Obviously, very positive results and feedback from the students. Dr. Tripepi, how is this feedback shaping how you're going to continue using Labster now back on campus?
Yes, that's a great question. That's a great question. So now that we're back on campus, we're actually seeing our student. We're doing the in-person lab. But thankfully, since Jefferson, as I was telling you before at the beginning, they gave us this license for 3 years. I have not dropped Labster, but I actually created a semester scenario that we're going to implement that will use both. So in this slide here, as you can see, that's what I'm going to do next semester when we're going to be fully like with 12 weeks of online. And as you can see, highlighted in blue, those are all Labster simulation. So we have 12 weeks. We have the Labster simulation. So week 1, you guys actually have a great lab safety and biosafety simulation. I actually always have a kick when I do it myself because there is a step. I don't want to spoiler alert, any of our participants here, but there is the step where your eyes get foggy and you need to reach your high wash. And it's pretty funny talking about that with the student. But as you can see here, I have decided that the student, we're going to do all the lab simulation before the week of the lab. So like I'm going to use Labster as a pre-lab so that they're going to have the opportunity to learn as they go through the Labster simulation. And then we are going to do the in-person lab that week. So the aseptic technique, I pair it with the testing of antimicrobial agent. All of those are available to buy. Those are kits that I buy for them. So if our participants are interested, I can send them the link. We have control of microbial growth in Labster, and they pair very well with food spoilage. Gram staining, I don't even do gram staining anymore in person because our microscopy are really bad. And so students get frustrated, but they love the Labster simulation for gram staining. So the gram staining can be done both Labster and in person, but I dropped the in person because we were not just getting results and the students were getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated because they would go through the process and we would not be able to see anything. PCR and gel electrophoresis, I put them in here. Pipetting lab, of course, we need to give our student pipettes in the hand, right? There is a Labster pipetting, but I still suggest my coworker, I should call them, to go on pipetting in hand. And then the polymerase chain reaction, I actually assign it both in lab and in class because it's a concept that students sometimes struggle to understand how it works. And I think we're going through Labster, it helps a lot. Now during COVID, we're going to have the COVID testing. So we're going to use the ELISA and the antibodies for students to understand. And then more in depth, finally, the new technology that came up few years in recent years, the CRISPR. And you guys have a good simulation that we can pair with CRISPR detection in our lab. So all of these will be my future direction, keeping Labster to help my student understand and retaining information and grow in microbiology.
Fantastic. So some really nice alignment there. And I know people I speak to are always interested again on this implementation piece. So just to confirm, what you had said was that these will be a pre-lab before the wet lab, and you said assigning those a week before, or giving the ability to complete a week before that wet lab.
Yeah, complete, like before the wet lab, they should do it. And I don't know what platform people are going to use, but like we use Canvas at Jefferson University, and Canvas and Labster get along very well. So I don't need to worry about opening up another website. The student just log into Canvas like they would normally do, and they just find all of their assignment. They just click on it, and then the Labster platform start for them. So it's a very easy process. And the grading is done for us, so I don't mind the help doing my job and the grading for the Labster simulation, to be honest. So that's just great. So
fantastic. And I mean, along with the grading, something with these virtual labs, I know students can do multiple attempts at them. Is that something you got any feedback, or students replaying these, or any feedback on that topic?
I didn't give them the possibility to do to get multiple attempts yet, because I want them to focus and don't be distracted when they do one. So I don't have a lot of feedback for them on that. But like, yeah, there is the possibility for them to do it for multiple attempts.
Wonderful. And obviously through the feedback, continuing to use Labster, if, looking back at yourself back in, what was that, March 2019?
Yeah.
Anything you would tell yourself back then, or tell other people considering virtual lab simulations, that maybe you wish you knew?
Yeah, I'm trying to tell my coworker here at Jefferson that now we have this tool and they should really consider to incorporate it either in lecture, because some of these lab explain very well some concept. Like we were just discussing about general biology, that could be a heavy class for a first year student that maybe was online, right? Maybe was online in high school last year because of COVID. I think the Labster simulation can really help assign as a pre-exercise from a concept to kind of help the student that maybe didn't have a lot of information at the time to gain a bit more of information, to catch up with the student that are already ahead of the curve for some reason or not. So I was just discussing to my coworker that we should start using Labster for the bio entry level class, because it could really help our student gain information that they don't have yet.
Is that something that you've seen maybe this semester following the past year and a half?
We have seen students struggling a lot more because they were online fully, right? So like I get the second year or the third year in microbiology and they didn't hold up iPad in their hand. So we're seeing these. Concept-wise, I think Labster can help. Excuse me. The manual thing, we need to bring them back into our lab. But like, I think we have this tool. And now again, for Jefferson, it's free for us, and it would be just foolish not using it. I think it would be a disservice for our student not incorporating those labs. They're fun. The 3D visual of those laboratory are something that I never seen. And I saw other company doing it. I was just bored doing that. I like how the Labster simulation bring the simulation and connect it to a real life event. For example, the PCR student have to solve a murder mystery. I mean, if that's not fun at this point, I don't know what else, right? What else can we invent for them to get through it? So I think it's fun, and I think like they can spend 45 minutes, and I think if retain like 20%, 30% of that concept is still a good thing for us to have it.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think we've just gone through a lot, and I'm sure the audience has some questions. I already see a couple in the Q&A, so let's open it up for questions. First, we have a question. Would love to hear how Dr. Tripepi thinks virtual labs are meeting the different learning needs of students. So that is a great question. Dr. Tripepi, what are your thoughts?
I was thinking about that last time. And then I also think I was commenting, I don't remember who, the fact that like right now we live in the situation in which some of our students may not be able to attend class, right? Maybe they go sick, maybe they go flag for a wallet service, right? And until we clear them, they cannot come to class. By assigning a virtual lab, I can help them don't lose material, don't fall behind, getting those points and all of these. So it can help the student. It also can help institutions that maybe don't have some of the instrument, right? Like, for example, gram staining. I would need to buy new microscopy, an entire set, to have them doing that technique, understand the technique, and actually see results. With Labster, I can have them doing all the steps and the results without going through buying microscopy, microscopes for them. Sure, we should have microscope, yes, but we don't live in a perfect world. So right now I don't have a good microscope set in our universities, but with the Labster, I can figure out a solution to have them that experience to do gram staining.
Fantastic.
I hope that answered the
Yes.
question.
Absolutely, meeting students where they are. I know something else that the conference today, So Connected, is broadly focusing on is equity in STEM. And as a woman in STEM, I would love to hear your perspective on kind of your role and what that means to you.
Well, being, I am a woman in STEM. I'm also part of the LGBT community. Usually you see me going on campus with this thing around my neck because I believe visibility matters. So being a woman in science and be part of the LGBTQ community, I tell my story to my students a lot. I tell them who I am, where they can find me, because I think looking at me, they can go and think like, okay, I can do it too. I always tell them, like, if I made it up here from Italy, a small town, you can do too. You can make it too. And I'm here to help them. So the other point with accessibility Labster is we can bring science where there are no instruments, where maybe the laboratory are not super full of instruments for them to work, but they can do the experiment that otherwise they wouldn't be able to do it with Labster. So I think that it's also another tool and another thought that Labster can help solve.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. And I'm sure your students appreciate you sharing your true self as well with them.
I hope so.
For anyone else listening, what do you have any advice for women or other people pursuing STEM careers? Anything, again, looking back, like what would you tell your younger self?
I had to change. I think I applied to more jobs than I got answer for. Sometimes you apply and then you get answer after 6 months that they hire somebody else and you forget you did that. The thing is, like, I like my job. I love my job, right? So I'm happy to be back on campus. And for me, it was a process to get finally to a tenure track position in the city where I live, because I used to work in New Jersey, an hour away. Then I come a little closer at Arcadia University, and then finally I was at Jefferson. But I never stopped, trying to build tools for the student for success. And I had an opportunity 14 years ago or something like that, when somebody at Penn accepted me in their lab. And, as a student from a small university in Italy, I had that opportunity, and that changed my life because now I'm here and I want to do the same thing for my student. I want to show them that they can succeed, and they have to work hard, right? But like that we're here to help them open up those doors for them, for their future.
Absolutely. And it's super clear from this conversation, prior conversations with you, that you truly, truly, truly care about the students. So thank you for that on behalf of them and everyone here. But with that, moving forward, what would you like to see, maybe anything improve specifically with virtual lab simulations to continue that broader learning, or just in STEM education in general?
Well, I think that for our STEM education, the change has to come from the bottom, right? Sometimes when we get students already at the university level, we see already big disparities. So I think that all of these companies need to do a better job to help students when they, from elementary school to middle school to high school. How can we help level the playing field, right? So that all our students can then access a college education and have the background to succeed during college education, right? Especially, I live in Philadelphia. We saw the impact that during COVID, locking down the school had on some kids, because we've seen parents in line to get tablets for their kids to study at home. And so this is something that we need to remember when we teach our students, like how can we help them bridge the gap, and how can we help them before even they come to college to have less of a gap, right? Because we see that, and that's one of the problem that we have. And then we need to remember, even in college, we have different students, we have a different population. There are students that need to work. So for those students that need to work, maybe they cannot all come to class at the same time, and they cannot do the extra project. So sometimes if they tell me that they will not be able to make a lab exercise, I assign them an extra Labster activity that they can do on their own, to, maybe on the weekend when they don't have work or something, to help them. Because I think we need to support the student, not punish them because they have to work to support themselves.
Amazing. I'm sure they appreciate that, and meeting them where they are at, no matter where that is. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's session. Thank you again, Dr. Tripepi, for taking the time out of your day to share your expertise with everyone here. And
Absolutely.
Thank you again to our participants today, asking questions and taking the time out of their schedules to also listen in. Again, this is recorded. It will be sent out. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to email info@labster.com. Dr. Tripepi, thanks again. And everyone else, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.